All right, so then let's kick this off. Jesse, do you want to go ahead and share your screen and then maybe just go and open the Notion document that I used to guide through this workshop?
Yes.
And then we can also drop the link to that Notion document into the chat, and people can open it themselves as well. Yes. So that's the Notion document that we're going to use. And this Notion document, it's basically also built in a way that you can do this workshop also entirely by yourself. So this workshop also kind of works as a tutorial that you do by yourself. But yeah, I think it's a little bit more fun to actually do this in this kind of social setting and have people show and explain the workflows that you're supposed to do here. So that's why I always appreciate the opportunity to do this as a workshop. And there is the link to this Notion document, this pris.ly shortener link. And maybe you can grab that, Jesse, and just drop it in the Zoom chat. It's right under resources.
There we go.
Yeah. And if you scroll down a little bit, there is also a starter project that's hosted on GitHub that comes along with it that we'll need later. Quick note on the prerequisites here. So the only things really that you need are Node.js and Docker, or you already come with a hosted MongoDB instance. So Docker here is only used to spin up a local instance of MongoDB in the beginning. If you already have an existing MongoDB database that you want to use that's hosted somewhere, or another one that's already running locally on your machine, you can totally use that. The only kind of requirement is that you'll have to be aware of the connection string. So you need to know how you can connect to that MongoDB from a Node.js application. All right, so let's move on. What you'll do basically, I've prepared 4 lessons. In the first lesson, we'll just set up the database, learn about data modeling, and apply or map the data model to MongoDB. Then we'll start exploring Prisma Client and how you can send queries to MongoDB using Prisma Client. And then in lesson 3 and 4, we'll actually cover how Prisma fits into the stack when you're building a web API. And we'll see this with both REST and GraphQL APIs. I just want everybody to get kind of a feeling for how easy it is to integrate Prisma into these setups. In terms of the agenda, I just noticed that I didn't update the times from the last time that I gave this workshop. So you can just add 2 hours to all of these times, and then you'll end up correctly. So we're kicking off right now and then go through all of the lessons individually. When we get to the lessons, then you can click on these subpages, Jesse, but you don't have to do that just yet, because I want to make everybody aware of what this lesson looks like. So in the beginning, I mentioned that this Notion document, it also pretty much works as a tutorial, but as a workshop, the structure that I have in mind for it is that we go through the tasks together. And specifically, there will be a time when the host, that's in this case, that's basically me and Jesse together, we're walking through the tasks that you'll have to accomplish yourself. And after that, you're getting dedicated time to do it yourself. So during the time when I'm explaining and my co-host here is coding, during that time, I really urge you to not code along yet and really just pay attention. Also bring up any questions that you might have. You can either drop them in the chat, or actually Zoom webinars that we're using here also have a dedicated Q&A feature where you can put these questions, and then Jesse and I can pick them up when you're done with a task. This is how you can contact me, all my contact details. And as a final note before we get into it, I just want to encourage everybody to take these kinds of workshop materials that I've prepared here. They're public. You can use them yourself. You can edit them if you want and customize them. But I really want to encourage everybody here to start teaching your own workshops, because it's a really great way to actually like cement your knowledge, really make sure that you have a very solid understanding of a topic. Teaching is just the best way to accomplish that. And it's also really fun, and it's a great way to also contribute back to the community to share your own learnings. So if you want to do this, you can just always go ahead and use this Notion document that you're seeing here and that you're using here. All right. Do we have any questions? I saw that there were some comments on the Slack, but these were from you, from you, Jesse, sharing the relevant links. And Alex indeed confirmed that it'll be $50 Atlas credits that we are sharing later during this workshop.
Yeah, I don't see any other questions.
Then I would suggest that we jump right in, Jesse. You can scroll up a little bit to lesson 1 and then click on that subpage. All right. So the goal of this lesson is to set up Prisma, get comfortable with Prisma's data modeling language, and already create some collections in your MongoDB database. And for that, I would ask you to clone the starter project from GitHub. There's a link to that right here in the setup. And then you can pretty much follow the instructions inside of the README, or just exactly also clone it like this. That's basically the first step.
Okay.
So open a terminal or whatever you use.
I like to use VS Code and just hit clone repository.
All right. I didn't know this. I love when I'm learning something new.
Yeah, we'll do things a little different this time. All right. Let me just pick my desktop here. I'll just put it into a test folder and select that. Okay, so it's cloning, and then we can open it. Boom.
Great.
Got
Somebody's asking to repost the link to the Notion doc. I'll do that.
Oh yeah.
Actually, with a shortener link.
Oh yeah.
That's still something that I can use my left hand for. Right. With that, I think you can open the terminal and just run npm install. And then depending on how you want to access a MongoDB database, you can either then run docker compose upd, or if you have one running locally, I guess you as a MongoDB developer advocate, you won't have a shortage on knowing how to host your own MongoDB. So I guess that task I'll leave up to you.
Yeah, I have a an Atlas one database spun up already. So if we could use the connection string, that'd be easy. Or would you rather me use the local?
I don't have a preference. If you already have it working, then just take the one that you have.
Okay.
People are asking in the chat to, I only shared it to the hosts and panelists. Okay, sorry about that, folks.
Oh,
here you go.
I think I shared everything to the hosts and panelists as well. Everything that we're seeing here is just us. That makes so much more sense.
We had a pretty good private chat already here, but but thanks for being persistent, everyone, and asking. Yes.
Okay. Do they also need here? Let me reshare the GitHub repo as well. Yes. Everyone. Okay, there's the GitHub repo.
The same actually happened to me on the Redwood.js office hours, which I attended. They were also using Zoom webinars, and I was a panelist, and I was just like making hilarious comments on the chat, but I was a little bit disappointed that nobody reacted until I also figured out that I actually only wrote it to the hosts and panelists.
That's funny. All right.
All right. So we do have, or you do have the connection string to your MongoDB instance already, Jesse. If you have it, then you can grab it and open the schema.prisma file inside the Prisma folder and just replace the existing one with one.
Oh, that's the wrong link. That's the GitHub link I just copied. Let me grab that connection string again. And if you don't know, just in your MongoDB Atlas dashboard, you can get that from your cluster. And so that's what it looks like. And then I have a super secret password here. It's Mongo. And it's totally fine because it's the network is locked down, so I don't care, and I'll replace this after the stream.
All right, that's great, cool. Then you can navigate back to the Notion document. Actually,
okay, let's
Because I actually think that we now already went, you can move on, create the MongoDB collections for this. Yeah, okay, perfect. Create your first Prisma model. So this is a quick breakdown of the Prisma schema. The Prisma schema is really the root configuration file for every Prisma project. And it contains mainly three things. Two of them we already see here in the Notion document in that code snippet. One is the data source. And that's just the connection to whatever database you want to connect to. In this case, we're specifying that we want to connect to a MongoDB database by providing that provider field, and then the connection string that is still the default from before, but of course, we already replaced it with a proper one. If you're using the Docker Compose file, then you can just leave the connection string as is. It should just work out of the box because the root and Prisma username and password are what we're setting inside of the Docker Compose file as the values for these fields. And then we also specify that we want to use Prisma client by adding the generator. But really, that's a kind of detail that you don't have to care about. It's just something that you always have to add. And in fact, if you don't have it and you run any Prisma CLI command, the Prisma VS Code extension will ask you to add it afterwards. So it's really something that you don't really have to understand or remember. So now your first task is to create a user model with the following fields and choose the data types that feel the most appropriate to you based on the description below. So we want a user model with an ID, with a name and an email field. Under each task, by the way, you have this expandable solution element where you can just go and copy and paste the solution. But I really also want to encourage everybody here to go and type out the solutions, because there is going to be a lot of auto-completion and a lot of other kind of nice things that the editor is going to provide, both when editing the Prisma schema, as well as when writing TypeScript or JavaScript and writing Prisma client queries there. So definitely want to encourage everybody to not copy paste the solution. Even if you need to take a look at the solution, then still go ahead and type it out yourself. Mm-hmm. All right, let's go and tackle the first tasks, Jesse. I think you can go back to VS Code and start typing the first model. So you've worked with Prisma a little bit already. So I think you probably know how to define a model in the Prisma schema. What keyword would you be using for that?
So really quick, just one quick note before we keep going. I just wanted to let everyone know as well, if you want to have that help in VS Code, is to install the official Prisma VS Code extension.
Oh, yes.
So I have that installed already.
That awesome. gives like syntax highlighting, quick fixes, auto completion, all the nice stuff.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so we're going to create a model, and I did this just a few days ago, and I'm already drawing a blank because this is a live stream, and I'm like, what's going on here?
No problem at all. And also, I mean, we have to give you extra credit, Jesse, because I think for you it's 7, 8 in the morning. What time is it for you?
It's 7 a.m. Yeah.
All right, on Monday morning. So I think that by itself deserves big respect already. So we'll just do this pair programming fashion, and I'll just drive, or like you'll drive, I'll navigate. So good. We use the model keyword, and in fact, if you don't know how to start, you could also just go ahead and click or hit Command space. And that would show you all the available keywords that you can start to define anything inside of Prisma.
And I have Copilot running too, so it's going to give me a little bit of help.
That's amazing. That's an extra help here that we can leverage. I love it.
It's kind of a cheat.
All right, but it was already smart enough to infer like one of the fields that we need. Indeed, the name field also was listed among the requirements, but it also was listed as an optional field there. And the way how we make something optional in the Prisma schema is just by appending a question mark to the type. So if you add a question mark after the string in the second line there, then we fulfill that requirement of the name being optional in the database. And we'll take a look at the red squiggly lines in a bit, actually. But first, let's add the email field. That's a third field that we'll need. It's also of type string. This time it's required. So you don't need to add the question mark, but you have to add the unique attribute to it, because that's what's also specified in emails should be unique in the database. And that's going to be enforced by Prisma, I believe. All right, it's still showing red squiggly lines. And actually, let's see if the VS Code extension is able to offer a quick fix here. I don't think so, actually, but just to double check. Okay, no suggestions. So what you have to do, and this is just a special thing that you have to do whenever you're using MongoDB, the ID field is required on your models, because this is just a requirement that we are directly taking over from MongoDB, where you have this _ ID field on every document. And the first thing is we have to tell Prisma that this is going to be auto-generated. It comes with a default value that's auto-generated. So indeed, we use the @default attribute. Copilot is on the right track here. And inside, we're using the auto function. That's exactly it. All right, we're still not quite there, because we also need to tell Prisma that this is a specific data type. Yes, well, we actually have to do this as well. So I'll explain this in a bit. We also have to add the specific data type. So we have to tell Prisma that this is not only a string, but under the hood, we want this of type object ID, I think is the right native type in MongoDB here. And that's what it's supposed to look like. In fact, I think the red squiggly lines should be gone if you remove, well, actually, if you remove the add map.
Oh, sorry.
And I think they're coming back. But if you rename the field to _ID, let's just make a test. If you rename this field to _ID, no, okay, also doesn't work. I wasn't quite sure. So you do need the add map _ID as well. And what this is, it tells Prisma also that the name of the field that you want to use inside of the Prisma client API, that is ID, will be different in the underlying database. And Prisma is now mapping the field that's called _ID in the underlying database to a field that's just called ID in the Prisma client API that we're going to work with in just a bit. Awesome. That's the user model. That's exactly what we need. And I think you can just go back to the Notion document and see what you're supposed to do next now.
Right. We'll just expand
exactly.
the solution and show.
Validate this. Everything's correct.
Everything, yep.
So task 2, map your data model to MongoDB. So here you have to find the right CLI command that's used in this case, but I'll just tell you, you don't have to open the docs here. So the right CLI command that you need to run inside of VS Code now is called Prisma DB push. And we like to prefix all invocations of the Prisma CLI command with npx, because that actually makes sure that you're using the local installation that you have inside of this concrete project. So yeah, if you run this, then Prisma is going to connect to your MongoDB, and it's going to create a collection called user. And it'll actually also generate the Prisma client API that you can now use and import from Node modules.
Nice.
All right, let's go back to the Notion document again. Sorry, it'll be a little bit of switching between the two here. And the next task is just to explore Prisma Studio. And you can do this by running the npx Prisma Studio command. And then your task is to create 3 records using Prisma Studio. Prisma Studio is a GUI where you can view and edit the data. So it's kind of like MongoDB Compass, I think, that you can also use as a GUI for your database locally. Here we're going to use Prisma Studio, but if you want, you can, of course, also manipulate the data there. So if you double click on the user there, you'll open the table for all the user documents. And top right is top in the middle is the add record button that you can use to add data here. And maybe you just add 3 kind of random people here. That's great. Add a second one, add record.
Now we want a third one.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. How about that?
Perfect. And now you can hit save three changes. And the data is in your MongoDB. All right. And with that, everybody can now take their own time and work on these tasks for a little bit. And Jesse and you, usually we can use this time to have a little bit of a chat, but I would suggest that actually for 5 minutes, we actually give the attendees time to work on the tasks ourselves. Also good opportunity for ourselves to take a quick breath, maybe get some water, get some tea. So I'm going to turn off my video and going to mute my mic. You can do the same, Jesse. And then in 5 minutes, we can turn back on our videos, our mics. And if anybody has questions along the way, don't hesitate to drop them in the Q&A so that Jesse and I can pick them up afterwards. So I'll see you in 5 minutes.
Sounds good.
All right, I am back. From all the participants, maybe raise your hand if you are done with a task from this lesson already. There is a raise hand feature here in Zoom webinars, and we can use that as an indication of how far you are. So a few people, I see 4 raised hands. So it seems like a couple of people are still working on it. So I'll give them a little bit more time.
Sorry,
Hey,
I'm
Jesse,
back.
I'm just asking people to raise their hands if they're done already. We have a couple of raised hands. Let's maybe wait for a few more.
Yeah. While we're waiting, let me show you something really cool.
Definitely.
So in here, I've got the cool MongoDB extension installed as well. And so we could just verify that the data
No
was actually
way.
written. I've got some sample data in here, but looks like in my connection string, I left it at my first database. So, and
That's
here's our
alive.
user, and then here's our documents. If I want
That's
to open up one of these
amazing.
documents.
Wow. Okay. I had no idea this MongoDB extension existed. That's a super
It's
nice
basically
job.
like, yeah, it's basically like a scaled down version of Compass, but inside VS Code.
All right. That's super useful. I'm
Yeah.
going to install this right now.
Nice.
um, all right. I would suggest that we move on with the next task now. And by the way, we've got some positive feedback already from Mubarak in the chat, who likes the explanations, and the workshop itself seems to be pretty straightforward, and that's what we like to hear. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we hope you enjoy the remaining 3 lessons as much as you did the first one. All right, so the next lesson, there is a link of this page that you can just take to move on to the next lesson. And in this lesson, really, the goal is to get comfortable with the Prisma Client API and explore some of the available database queries that you can send with it. And we want to look at things like CRUD queries, so for create, read, update, and delete operations. But then Prisma also has a couple of nice features when it comes to working with relations, then filtering and pagination. And along the way, you'll also introduce a second model with a relation to the user model that you created before, so that you can even send relation queries. For the setup in this lesson, you can just continue working in the same Prisma MongoDB workshop project that you already set up. And the script.ts file contains a main function that is invoked each time the script is executed. And yeah, as for the hints, I just repeat myself here. I really encourage you to type yourself. Don't copy paste, even if you need to look at the solution. I think there is still a lot of instructional benefit that you get when you type things yourself. Then you can also use the auto completion. That's going to help you a lot anyways, and visualize data in Prisma Studio. That's going to be helpful in some of the tasks as well. All right, how about we move over quickly to VS Code, actually, before we look at the first task, to just make everybody familiar with the setup that we currently have here. So maybe you could take a look at the package.json file. I just want to show everybody that this is a very plain and bare bones project. The only dependencies really are like TS Node and TypeScript as dev dependencies, so that we can use TypeScript here in an easy way. And then we have Prisma Client as a dependency at runtime, and also the Prisma CLI as a dev dependency. I forgot to mention that before under dev dependencies. So these are the only dependencies we're using. And then we have this script.ts file where we're going to write our queries that you can execute after each task. So if you navigate to the script.ts file, we see that it's also pretty much empty. The only thing that we do here is we import the Prisma Client constructor from the @Prisma Client node module. Then we instantiate Prisma Client by calling that constructor. And then we have an empty main function that's invoked every time we run npm run dev. And then at the end, we just have some code for error handling and closing database connections. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the first task inside of Notion. And this is to write a query to return all user documents and then printing the result inside of using console.log. All right, let's go to VS Code and start writing our query. So I would suggest that we store the okay, Copilot. I think he's it seems that it's actually a participant in this workshop and can read what we're the task we're doing. So this is literally the query you need to write. So I think you can just use it here.
Should I turn Copilot off? Otherwise, we're going to finish this workshop very quickly.
Let's try it with Copilot. I'm okay with that. But you need to add the second line. But I'm sure that as soon as you start typing the C, it can also guess that that's what you want to do. Wow. All right. With that, I think you can just go ahead and run npm run dev, and we'll log the.
Oh, I still have Studio going. Should I open up a new terminal?
Yeah. Maybe you can just leave Studio running, and then we look at things here. And when you run this, we just expect to see the same 3 user documents that you added in Prisma Studio before, and that you also showed in the MongoDB extension. Perfect. That looks great. And actually, maybe to go back to the code and show everybody what they missed because of Copilot, if you would just remove the prisma.user.findMany so that we can show everybody the auto completion that's kicking in when you're typing yourself. So if you type prisma.user and hit Control Space here, you actually see everything, all the operations that you can invoke on the Prisma instance here. And in this case, you want to run a model query. So you select the model. And if you hit Control Space again, you see all the queries that you can run for that model. And here, indeed, we're using the findMany one to return all of them.
Nice.
All right, that's great. So let's go back to Notion. Or actually, if you want, so that we don't always have to switch back and forth, I also have the Notion doc open here to the left. I can basically just instruct you every time so that you don't have to switch yourself.
No worries, either way.
So the next task is to write a query to create a new user document. But the catch here is that you should only supply a value for the email, but not for the name. And the value should be alice@prisma.io. So let's go ahead and switch back to VS Code and find the right query to do that. And maybe rename the all users variable to result so that it's kind of just generic enough that we can use it for all future queries. All right. And now we just have to edit the Prisma client query here. So we need to create a new document. So what queries are there that look like they would help here? Right, the create one. And yes, if you also so if you do it like this, I think you cannot invoke the auto completion. So what I typically do is I also close the squarely brace and the parentheses in there. Exactly. And if you now hit Control Space again, you can actually see the auto completion. And there you go. You have data and select as the only relevant options here. And if you hit data and again, you open and close the braces, hit Control Space, you see what's available. In this case, we only want to supply the email. And we also see that this is the only one that's required. ID and name are optional here. And now you can add the actual string of alice@prisma.io. And that's it.
Nice.
You can go ahead and run this again. Now we expect this new user document being printed. And if you were to open this in your MongoDB extension, you should now also see a new user here. If it yeah, you probably have to refresh.
And I see 4 documents. So there it is.
Perfect. That's great. So the next task is to write a query to update an existing user document, because we just only added the email, but what if we now, after the fact, want to add the name to it? So now we're going to figure out what the right query is to update the name here as well. And it's prisma.user.update. So not too creative in terms of naming. And if you use autocompletion here again, you see that you have two required arguments here. One is called data and one is called where. Let's start with the where one, because that allows us to identify the record that should be updated. And if you hit Control Space again, it should actually show you not only the ID, but also the email. So you can update an existing document by any field that's declared unique inside of your Prisma schema. And in this case, we want to use the email. That's perfectly all right what you're typing there. And then the second thing that's required here is what we want to update. So after the closing brace from where, so in the next line, we add a comma and we add the data field. And that's just an object that takes the name, and Copilot is always one step ahead here. And yeah, that's how we want to name the user. So you can run this again. And this should update.
Nice.
Great. All right, the next task is to add a post collection to the database. And for that, I would ask you to go back to the Prisma schema file, and we work out together what that model should look like. So what you can do already is you can copy paste the existing user model and then just delete the name and email fields and rename it to post. And then we already have our scaffold that we can get started with. Remember that the ID is required in exactly that shape for every model that you're using with Prisma and MongoDB. All right, it needs a title, indeed, Copilot. So we go ahead, the title is required, so you don't have to do anything else on that line. Let's move on to the next one. There is a content field, almost. We'll call it content, and it's optional, so you can add the little question mark again. Then we'll add a field called published that indicates whether a post is published or not, and that's going to be Boolean. And we'll add a default value for this one as well. So it'll stay required, but we'll add the default value, and it'll be false, so that every new post document will initially not be published. And then we also will need to add an author and author ID field. So you can start with the author ID here. And in fact, everything that Copilot suggests here looks correct, except for the references here that should not be user, but ID actually, because it references the ID field on the user model. Yes, that looks right. And we're defining a relation here. And whenever we define a relation, we also need to add relation fields between the models that have this relation. And so here we're adding a one-to-many relation, and GitHub is the Copilot is already spot on. And yeah, actually my mistake. The add relation attribute has to go on this line where you have the relation field. So not on the author ID line, but just on the author line. Okay. And let's make that relation also optional on the post side. So add the question mark both to the user and also to the author ID string field. And the red squiggly lines, I assume, are there because Prisma always expects the second relation field on the other side. So you can add a field called posts. That's of type post list, and that's exactly it. All right, if you save this, then it should auto format as well, and you now have the right second model in place. And to actually create the post collection also in your MongoDB database, you can go ahead and run the npx prisma.db push command inside of your terminal again. Fantastic. Nice. That looks great. So yeah, let's cover 2 or 3 more queries here. And then I think we can leave the stage to the participants. So the next task number 5, is write a query to create a new post document. So in this task, you'll create a first post document with the title Hello World. And we already know how to create new documents. And actually, you also have to adjust now the the model that you're using here. And as you'll notice, there is auto completion already for you for this. If you go back, there should be auto completion. Let's see, Prisma dot control space. If it's not there, it might be that you have to restart your TypeScript server, which you should be able to do if you hit Command Shift P inside of VS Code to open the command palette, and then restart. If you type restart, TypeScript, restart TypeScript server, and that happens rarely. So for me, it's
there it is,
picking it up automatically. If it's not picking up for anyone, then it's because the types haven't been picked up yet that are now in your Node modules, and you can restart the TypeScript server inside of VS Code.
I think it might be a local development issue, because I was running into that quite a bit, and so that's probably just an issue on my end.
It could be. All right, so this is the task that you, the post, you only need to provide a title that should be Hello World. So indeed, you follow the data here and title, and let's title it Hello World. And you can run this already.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Nice.
And there is a new task. And the next one, we'll want to now add an author to this post that you just created. So you'll have to update this post using the update query again, exactly. And now we already know where. This time, because you're updating a post, you can only update it by the ID. This means you'll have to grab the object ID. Either if it's still in the terminal output, you might be able to grab it from there.
There we go. Okay, so grab that, put it in there.
And now the data is going to be a little bit more interesting, because we are going to follow the auto completion again. So we want to update the author. So there should be an author that can be updated here. Exactly, the author. And now curly braces, follow the auto completion, control space. It should suggest a connect option indeed. So you hit connect. And this means that you're now connecting it to an user document. And you can do that either with an ID or with an email, because again, you can use any field that's unique that allows Prisma to uniquely identify any document here. So this is going to be, you can add me, the user that you already created there. All right, so if you run this again, we don't see it. Well, actually, we do see a difference here, because Prisma under the hood now also configured the author ID that previously was empty. But using this API call, this query to Prisma client, Prisma now also set, of course, the author ID on the post document here. All right, maybe navigate back to the Notion document. We can scroll over the remaining queries. Everything else I'll just leave to the attendees as an exercise now. The only one that I really want to draw attention to here is query task 8 is going to be interesting, especially since you're using TypeScript. Because this is a query where you're only selecting a subset of the user fields. So instead of just querying everything, you only want user objects returned that only have an ID and a name, but not an email field. And as you'll notice, TypeScript is typing the result accordingly. So you won't even be able to access the email field on the returned objects because Prisma provides type safety guarantees, even when you're only retrieving partial documents from your database here. The same also applies when you include relations, which is task 9. And then just a couple of more tasks for filtering, for nested queries, pagination, atomic updates, and finally also one with an embedded document that you can also explore. For this one, we'll give you a little bit more time to work on this. I don't think we've gotten any questions in the chat or in the Q&A. So what I would suggest is that we give you 15 to 20 minutes for this one, so that we'll meet here around 5 past, 10 past the hour. And if you have any questions, then drop them in the chat, drop them in the Q&A session, and Jesse and I will pick them up after you get the time to work on these tasks yourself. And yeah, you can withdraw again from the stream, take a little breath, and I'll see you back here in 15 to 20 minutes, Jesse.
Okay.
Bye. All right. I think we can slowly get back here. No questions as far as I see in the chat or in the Q&A section. So I take this as a good sign. Hopefully everything has been clear so far. Otherwise, again, don't hesitate to drop your questions. And if you have more general questions, by the way, not specifically related to the workshop, but just in general about Prisma with MongoDB, maybe how it fits into your stack, that could be an option as well.
There is one question just coming
in.
Yeah.
Thomas is asking, Prisma needs to perform transactions, which requires your MongoDB server to be run as a replica set. Oh, yes. Okay, that's a good point. Depending on where you are hosting your MongoDB database here, the Prisma client queries might not work as you now experience, Thomas. So the reason is that Prisma requires a replica set to be available inside of your MongoDB database. And for that, you either need to use a specific version of MongoDB when you run it locally. So in the Docker Compose file, there actually is a Docker image that comes with this replica set. The ones that are hosted on MongoDB Atlas, I think they also have this by default. Mm-hmm. So you're probably using some third way, Thomas, here that doesn't have the replica set, and that's why it's not working. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we answered this one, and hopefully that's resolved. So let's see, another question. Introspecting based on a data source defined in Prisma schema. I got this error when I define, when I need to pull it right now on one schema. You get this error that reintrospection with DB pull is currently not supported with MongoDB. Huh, that's interesting. I thought that this would work. If it doesn't, I mean, like the error message appears because you're trying to run the introspection a second time, it seems like. So maybe you can confirm that the first time you ran Prisma DB pull, it actually worked, and then it gave you this error. If no, then something is fishy. And in that case, I would probably actually ask you to open up a GitHub issue in the Prisma repository and describe your problem there, because that's going to be a little bit more involved. And I don't really know what other issues there might be that you cannot run DB pull for at least one time when you're using MongoDB. That should work.
Yeah, I ran through that and it worked. Right. But I'd never tried it a second time. So that could be something different.
Right. Okay, so I think if there are not more questions, we can also resolve these. With that, all the open questions are answered. And out of curiosity, just by show of hands before we move on to the next lesson again, you can raise your hand if you were able to complete all the tasks. So I know these were quite a lot of tasks, and I'd be surprised if a lot of you actually went through them in these 15, 20 minutes. But we do have some people here. That's quite nice. And yeah, for everybody else, I would suggest that you can still come back to this and finish this a little bit later. But we can already move on to the REST API session. And there, actually, you're going to reuse a lot of the skills that you just learned, because again, the task is basically just to fill in the gaps for Prisma client queries, and the Prisma client queries will be very similar to the ones that you already created, except that here they'll be written in the context of a REST API, and in the next in the context of a GraphQL API. All right. So for the setup here, first, I would suggest that you run the git stash command to just kind of get rid of everything that you've done on this branch, and then check out another branch as your starter branch for this lesson. So you can first run git stash. And then you switch over to the REST API branch. So git check out REST-API. And there we are in a completely different project. If you want, you can quickly pop open the file tree, and then we'll check what it's there. It's a very simple Express app. So yeah, let's open the package.json file to have a look at the dependencies. Again, it's a very bare bones project, not a lot of dependencies in here, some TypeScript dependencies, and then pretty much in addition to the ones that we were using before, you only have the Express dependencies and the types for Express here, so that we can run an Express server. So still very simple setup, still npm run dev as the command to start the server. And in fact, you can already run this command and it'll execute the code inside of the source index.ts file. Inside the source folder, index.ts. And that file is runnable. So if you run npm run dev here, or
you would need to do an install.
Right, exactly. And maybe also run remove modules before to just start out with a clean slate. So you can run.
Is that npm? What is that?
Actually, you can just remove with the rm command. So like rm. And then minus gotcha. Rf, so that it removes it recursively. Yeah. Yes, node modules. And it's an underscore, I think, instead of a hyphen.
Yeah, it is.
And now you can run npm install. And then as dependencies are installing, you can open the Prisma schema, because that looks a little bit different than before, but just slightly different. So not a lot of changes, but I still want to point them out. We still have the user model, we still have the post model. The only thing really that changed was that on the post model, we have a few new fields. We have a created at field, an updated at field, and a view count field that wasn't there before. So these fields are new, otherwise it's exactly the same data model. And Jesse, you'll also have to update the connection string again, because it still uses the local one, and also add a new database name. So before, I think you used my first database, and here you can use just maybe REST API or just another one, so that we write to a different database.
Yeah, so right here, my first database, let's replace that. Say REST API.
Perfect. And that's it already. So to finish the setup, you can run npx Prisma DB push again to apply the data model on the database and actually create these collections.
Oh, why is my what is going on with this? That looks weird. Let me just start up a new one. Strange. Okay, npx db Prisma DB push, right?
Yes, exactly.
Push. There we go.
Nice. Everything created. And the last step in the setup, and all this is outlined in the Notion document as well, by the way. So if everybody watching now is already sweating because they need to remember all of this, don't worry. All of this is detailed in the Notion document in lesson 3 as well. You now can also run a seed command that will invoke a seeding script that's also located in this project. If you just run npx Prisma DB seed, this script is going to get invoked. It's Prisma DB seed. So npx Prisma DB seed. You dropped the DB there, I think. Yes.
There we go.
So it's running the seed command and creates 3 users. And actually, if you want to take a quick look at what that seeding script looks like, you can open the Prisma folder in the file tree again. And there is the seed.ts file that's just
I
using.
have to restart my TypeScript again. So
could
weird.
be, yeah.
So weird.
So that was command. Yeah, perfect. So if you scroll down a little bit in the script, you see that we're just taking this data, these JavaScript objects that are defined there, and we are looping over this array and creating all of these users individually. And all of this already happened. So the database is populated with a few user and a few post documents here. All right, so let's open index.ts and get familiar with the project structure. So this is, again, very simple and straightforward setup for Express whoever has used Express in the past, this will look very familiar to you. We define several routes here. So a get route on /users, a post route on /signup, and all of these have the skeleton already for the route and some commented out code where you only need to fill in the part that currently says to do with a Prisma client query to make this route work. Before we do that, you can already go ahead and run npm run dev once to start this. And the server is now running. However, if you were now to already go to any of the routes that are defined, so /user, for example, if you were to open this in your browser, you would run into an infinite loop because at the moment we don't return anything from these route controllers. So that's why it's not really functional. The server is running, but we cannot actually access any routes.
There's a little bit of conversation going on here in the chat.
Yeah, I think that
has to do with,
yeah, it was just Alex who was following up on the question that was asked in the Q&A before about the schema introspection. Okay, so we need to fill in these Prisma client queries. You can stop the server again. The last thing that I want to show before we start implementing these queries is the test.http file that you can also find in the file tree. And actually, yeah, I would also ask you to install a VS Code extension for that, Jesse, and that's the REST client extension. There it is, the very first one. That allows you to send the HTTP requests that are spelled out in this test.http file directly here inside of VS Code using these little send request buttons that you see there.
Nice.
So once we have implemented the routes, you can use these to test whether the implementation was correct. So let's get on it then. And let's open the index.ts file. And let's start with the app.getUsers route. So you can just remove the comments there. And you start typing await.
I'll just type it out.
Oh,
let's see. Prisma. Let's see. What are we doing? So we're working with users. So we need the user.
We need to return all the users.
All the users.
The .find menu was spot on again from Copilot here.
Okay.
So that's correct. And maybe we can already go ahead and implement the second one already as well. And then we start testing. So for the post, you can start typing again, await prisma.user.create. Again, Copilot is smelling what we want to do here. So again, we use the same API as in the previous lesson. The data object takes a name and an email. And conveniently, these are already the objects or the values that we retrieved from the request's body that's coming with this post request here. So indeed, the query as you wrote it here looks correct to me. How about we do a little intermediate test here? So you can restart the server and then open up the test.http file, and then we'll see if that works.
This first one, all right.
It opens up the HTTP response, and indeed we see a JSON list of all the users that have been seeded via the seed script before that we expect to be returned here. Very nice. So we can do the same for the post request here. If you send it,
this is going to send name and email.
Exactly, and that's the body of the post request that's defined there in JSON. Nice. So we now have the fourth user document in the database, and this should all be functional. You can try to send this request again, by the way. Let's see what happens then, because there is actually an error that's popping up now. I think the server crashed. If you open up the terminal, we don't do proper error handling here, so that's why the server is crashing. And it'll tell you that you're violating a unique constraint here. Unique constraint failed on the constrained user email key. That's a little bit further up. That's it. And that's because we were trying to create the second user with the same email, but Prisma didn't allow this. The Prisma client query threw an error and made the Express server crash here. So of course, in a real world scenario, you would catch this kind of error to not have your server crash. And you would also be smart about what kind of data you want to insert here and not to duplicate any emails. But that's great. Everything works as expected. So I think let's implement 3 or 4 more routes, and then we can give time to our attendees again to work on this themselves. This is one where we create a new post. The ambiguity of the term post here is a little bit annoying. So it's a post request to the post route, but the post route, of course, refers to our model post. Previously, that was user when we wanted to create a user. And again, we'll follow the auto completion here, the data object and the title. We already retrieved this, the content. And for the author, you can type author again. And the author email is not a field that's accepted inside of the query. So we actually have to do the dance with the nested create here, exactly with the nested connect. And that's it. That should work now. All right, let's do one more. That's the increment post one. Yeah, that's great. So for this one, we need to increment the number of views of a specific post here in the database. So you start again by typing await and then prisma.post, because that's what we want to update here. And so first we have to identify the post that we want to update. Oops. In this case, that identification happens when we send the HTTP request. So inside of where you can just reuse the ID field that we're retrieving from the URL params. And that's everything you have to type here, basically. ID, the shorthand object notation. And the second object here is called data. And there is where we have to take the view count, I think the field is called. If you hit Control space, you should also again see the option, view count. And then again, open curly braces for an object, because we're now performing an atomic operation. So instead of setting this value ourselves, you can hit Control space and you see all the operations that you can do here. And we're using the increment operation and adding the value of 1 here. And that should be just an integer. Exactly. Yep. All right, so that's the code we need. We're updating the post. It gets returned. And yeah, if you restart the server and go back to the test.hdb file, and then we should be able to send these queries. So first, let's try to create the new post. There we go. It's a new post that's created here. And there you can grab the ID right there from the editor, exactly. And now inside of the test.htv file, you can replace the current placeholder object ID with this. And
so this is one's going to increment the views?
Yes. So you can also send it multiple times in a row if you want, and we'll just check if the view count field actually increases with every request.
View count is at 1 right now. So let's send it again. Now it's at 2, 3.
Right.
4. Nice.
Seems to work. Adriano is asking in the chat, what's the name of the extension that you're using to send HTTP requests directly? It's called the REST client. VS Code REST client. There's also a link to this in the Notion document if you're looking for it there.
I haven't used this one before. Usually I use the Thunder client, but this is really nice. I like this.
Yeah, actually, it's like really convenient if you don't want to use VS Code. And I also, in fact, I only became aware of this extension because of someone who commented on YouTube on one of my videos where I was showing pretty much the same examples here and showing the same REST API and was always switching to Postman as well. And then in the YouTube comment, they told me about this extension. And since then, I'm also using this extension right here inside of VS Code, and I really like it.
It's very convenient.
All right, with that, I think we can give, let's say 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes again to our participants to work on these tasks by themselves. And when we are back, we are going to share the MongoDB Atlas codes. So if you were interested in that, and that was the only reason to stick around, we'll do that before lesson 4. We'll share these. And then we'll wrap up with lesson 4, where we do the same with the GraphQL API. So Jesse, I'll see you here in 10 to 15 minutes.
Sounds good.
All right, we are back. So you just informed me, Jesse, that you have a storm coming up here,
Yes.
and that
I don't
it
know if
might
you can hear
affect
the.
your power. Yes, we can still hear you. You're still there.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you can hear the thunder, and
in the
it's
background.
like it's. No, I
Mm,
guess
well,
no.
I can't hear anything. I
Yeah,
guess like
the
your mic
microphone's
is
not
good
picking it
enough.
up.
Yeah, to filter it out. But yeah, hopefully you'll get through this. Hopefully no damage will be done. All right, let's move on to the last lesson. But before that, actually, let's go ahead and share the promo code. Okay, I could have taken the time, of course, to prepare this, but here it comes. The Mongo code is Prisma minus MongoDB, all uppercase. I'll drop it in the chat. Prisma minus MongoDB and all caps. That's the Atlas credits that you can redeem for $50. Credit of $50. All right, let's move on and wrap this up with the last lesson. Oh, before that, there is a question coming in from Guillaume. How long will last the Notion? How long this Notion document will be available, I guess. It'll be there indefinitely. And as I mentioned in the beginning, you can also reuse it, share it with your friends, run it, use it to run this workshop by yourself. So you can just use it, customize it in whatever ways you like. All right, then let's wrap this up. A little bit of setup. I can guide you through all the setup steps again. They're also explained here in the Notion document, but I know them by heart by now. So you can move over into VS Code again and open your terminal. And before you check out the new branch, you'll have to stash your current changes. Now you can run exactly git checkout GraphQL API. Here we go. Again, remove RF node modules and install dependencies again. And then you can already pop up the Prisma schema again. It's the exact same Prisma schema as you were using before. And you again also need to adjust the connection string for the MongoDB database.
And this is GraphQL, so I'll name it GraphQL. Go. So got a GraphQL database.
Yes. And everything is the same as before, so that's great. We have the exact same seeding script here as well. So you can go ahead and run npx prisma db push to create the collections.
Oh,
and after that, we want to seed the database again. Oh, all right. Maybe some typo in the schema.
Let me verify. Here, Mongo. Oh, yep.
No-go. There
typo. Typo. That was my fault.
Wouldn't have been a proper workshop if that hadn't happened at least once.
There we go. Nice.
All right. Okay. And we also want to seed it again. So npx prisma db seed is the command that we need to run for that.
Nice.
I just want to say it's like before.
So it's so easy to work with Prisma. It's like everything is just I don't know. It's just like it's such a breeze.
That's music in our ears. And yeah, I mean, it's the whole reason why we built Prisma, right? Because like database workflows, they can feel really cumbersome, or also like, at least for me, like the database is always this thing where I never really know whether right now it's in the right state. For relational databases, that's even more relevant than for MongoDB, because like MongoDB already relieves you of some of these like burdens that you have to deal with when you're using a like relational database. But even with MongoDB, it's always this, is the state in the database actually what I expect it to be right now? And there, like using Prisma, I think really provides a lot of confidence that you can actually trust what's inside the database at any point. There is a question in the chat already that Apollo Server Core isn't available.
Did you do an npm install?
JSON. Yeah, should be. This should get resolved with the npm install. Let's actually take a look at the package.json as well. That's what I would just have suggested. So we see a lot of dependencies that now relate to building GraphQL servers. And actually this Apollo server one, that should be enough for the code that we have written.
Yeah, if it's saying you can't find the module Apollo server, Apollo server core.
Try to just delete node modules and reinstall dependencies again. That should fix it. If not, I don't really know what's happening. Maybe somebody else from the attendees has a hunch. And if so, then feel free to drop that in the chat as well. And otherwise, yeah, let's just take a quick look at the package.json here. So just a couple of dependencies again. A bunch of them are familiar to what we've been using before. And yeah, with that, let's take a look at the index.ts file, which is where we define the GraphQL schema and resolvers. What you can do actually also is to run npm run dev already, because while we won't be able to send any queries, the schema is already in place. And because we were using GraphQL this time, we can inspect the schema already using the GraphQL playground. Have you actually already worked with GraphQL in any capacity?
Very little. It's been quite a while since I've worked with it, so you'll definitely have to give me a refresher.
And was that mostly on the front end or on the back end? Have you used it on the back end side already? Ah, okay.
Mostly on the front end, yeah.
You'll now open the black box that's a GraphQL server and understand a little bit of how it works. So yeah, if you open it, the URL that you see there, a GraphQL playground will open in the browser.
Yeah, it opened on my other screen. 1 second. Bring it over here.
There you go. And if you now expand the schema tab on the right, so you've got two tabs there, schema and docs. And the docs are just another view at the schema, basically. So what we see here is the raw GraphQL schema using GraphQL schema definition language, SDL. And if you click on docs, you'll just see a nicer view of that that just lists all the queries and mutations and additional types that this GraphQL API exposes. So in fact, you can already start typing these queries. Maybe inside of the playground on the left side, you can open curly braces. And then, like much when using Prisma Client, you can also use the auto-completion here with control space. And you see all the queries and queries in this case that you have available. So if you select all users, and after that, open curly braces again. So no colon, just curly braces. Yep, there is this one additional one. Yeah, you can see what you want to query. So if you just select ID and name here. And you need to delete one of the curly braces at the bottom. And you can run this query already, and it won't run into an infinite loop, but it'll just respond with this error message because the GraphQL API actually specifies that, or the schema specifies that like you can never return null for any values here, and the current implementation of the resolver does return null. And so we'll have to work on the resolver implementations to fix this. So let's open VS Code. And the script.index.ts file. So this is the first part. So every GraphQL API, it consists of two main parts, or actually three main parts, if you will. So the first one on a high level is just the server. You need something that's able to take in HTTP requests, that's grabbing the GraphQL query from the request's body, and that then hands this over to the GraphQL resolver system, the resolution engine that's actually resolving these queries. And this resolution engine, it comes in two parts. One is just the schema definition, and that's what we see here written as a string. The type query, type mutation, what you see here, all of this defines the GraphQL API operations that we also just saw in the playground, and any additional data structures that are going to be needed in the API. And then the second part is the resolvers. And that's the part where we actually define or implement the behavior of all of these already defined GraphQL queries and mutations. And the important part about this resolvers object that we're defining in JavaScript here is that the naming of the fields in that object, they have to match the names inside the GraphQL schema right above. So the query, the uppercase query field here has to match the spelling of the query type inside of the GraphQL schema. So indeed, if you scroll up again, you see the type query, and that has to be spelled in the exact same way, because that's an automatic mapping that's done by GraphQL under the hood. And you have to be wary about the spelling here. And in the same way that the query has to be spelled in the exact same way, all users here has to be spelled in the exact same way as well as a nested operation under the query type here. Yeah, so that's the spelling of this. And we now have to implement this resolver. So you can go ahead, remove the to-do, remove the comment, and we want to return, yeah, you can spell that out. And this time Copilot is not quite smart enough. Yes. So we do want to use the context here, because that's where our Prisma client object is attached to. So you'll get the auto completion here again, context prisma.user, and there should be auto completion. If you hit Control Space.
Yep, user.
Okay, maybe. No, it doesn't seem to show it for you. That's strange. Try restarting the TypeScript server just once to see if maybe it'll pick it up.
That's probably it.
But otherwise,
there we go. That's what it was.
All right, perfect.
I got to figure out my local dev environment. I don't know what the deal is.
And yeah, we just need the find many query here, because we don't provide any arguments or anything. So you don't need the semicolon. You can add it. It's optional. And let's also already implement the post by ID here. This time we do expect one argument. And yeah, this time Copilot is spot on, actually, except that it's not find one. That's an old naming of this query, actually, but it's called find unique, because we are searching by a unique value here. And the ID we just grabbed from the args object that's being passed into this resolver. And yeah, let's go ahead and test this out.
Restart?
Yes, we need to restart the server.
Back. And so now this should work.
Yes, if you send the all users query,
nice.
Yes, we see these users. And another thing that you can do here, because GraphQL allows you to send nested queries right here in the playground, you can edit the query on the left and start nesting fields to also retrieve the user's posts. So you can go ahead and type the posts and open curly braces. And now if you hit Control Space, you can select fields of the post type of your GraphQL schema. So you can just add one or two properties, maybe ID and title. And if you send this, we'll be disappointed, because I didn't tell you one thing yet, and that's how we are going to resolve these relations. It does work, though. We see that we don't get an error, but we would expect some data here, because some of these users already have posts that we seeded initially. So we would want to see these posts here as well, and not only empty arrays. So in order to resolve these nested relations in GraphQL, you have to implement so-called type resolvers. And for that, you can go back to VS Code. The type resolvers skeletons are there already as well. We'll just skip over all of the other queries and mutations. Leave those as exercises for our participants. And down there, you see the post and user resolvers exactly. And so right now they return null or an empty array. That's what we just saw. This resolver literally just got invoked 3 times for the query that you had just sent, Jesse. So here we need to resolve this. And the way how you do this is just you basically follow a predetermined pattern. So no matter kind of which GraphQL with Prisma example you find, it's always the same implementation. So what you do here, you return Prisma dot. So actually, you have to access the Prisma instance again on the context object. So it's context.prisma. Sorry for that. And then we have to find the user for which we want, the post for which we want to return the author here. So we're going to run a find unique query on a post in this case. Find unique, that's it. And for find unique, we have to provide the where option to identify the post that should be returned. And indeed, we have to provide an ID, and we do get that from the parent object that's passed into this resolver. And now the only thing that we have to do is, because this resolver shouldn't return a post object, but instead a user object. So we have to use the .author at the end. We're using the Fluent Relations API of Prisma Client here. And that's it. That's exactly it. So this is going to be invoked for every user that's going to be returned by the GraphQL resolver system. And it'll find for every post, and it'll return the corresponding author. And we'll now use the same kind of pattern, just inverse, basically. Yeah, you can copy paste. That makes sense. And now instead of prisma.post, it's prisma.user.findUnique. And instead of .author in the end, it's .posts. And there you go.
Easy enough.
And you can go ahead, save and run this. Restart the server. And if you now go back to the Prisma client, to the GraphQL playground indeed, and run this, we're expecting to now actually see the posts from these users.
Hey. Nice.
There you go. All right. We're almost at the end of this workshop, but I do want to leave some more time for questions, and also for our participants to at least get some more time to work on this lesson. So let's give them 5 more minutes again where we tune out. And in 5 minutes, Jesse, we can meet back here again and wrap up the workshop.
Sounds good. See you in a bit.
All right. See ya. All right. I think we can slowly go ahead and wrap this up. No questions have been coming in, so I just read this as everything was clear and you are now pretty excited and ready to build stuff with MongoDB and Prisma, which is really nice. Maybe Jesse, you could quickly, to wrap up, pop up the launch week page in the browser, the Prisma, the launch week page on the Prisma website. So it's prisma.io/MongoDB-launch. It requires you to authenticate. So I don't know if you did that or if you quickly want to hit the register with GitHub button, because then you can actually see the schedule. And I thought that maybe we can quickly go over a couple of the activities that we have further planned for this week, because this wasn't the last time that we were going to appear together on a stream, Jesse. And I'm already looking forward to the next times. So yeah, today, this is the basic workshop that you all just went through. Tomorrow, there's going to be a meetup where Sabin, another developer advocate over here at Prisma, is going to give a talk. And we'll have some more talks there as well. And then Sabin is also going to teach the advanced workshop, where the goal actually is to build a full stack application with Prisma, Remix, and MongoDB. And I think for styling, it uses Tailwind. So that's if you found that the workshop today was a little bit boring, just working in the script.ts file, exploring Prisma client queries, or having these bare bones REST API and GraphQL APIs there, I think this one is going to be a lot more interesting, because that really teaches you how to build a proper application, how to model the data with Prisma and MongoDB in a more useful way than maybe we did it today. So all of that expects you in the workshop on Wednesday. Then there is a blog post about the Prisma introspection feature for MongoDB that also was topic here in the chat before. So that is coming on Thursday. And on Friday, Jesse will do office hours together with Sabin as well. This time, I think the timing is a little bit more friendly for you in the US. And yeah, we are looking forward to seeing all of you there. Bring your questions. So if you now start to get your feet wet with Prisma and MongoDB, and along the way you start running into questions or issues, that's what you all can bring up on Friday during this live stream. And finally, I also want to mention that's not part of the schedule here, and it's available for everybody. But Sabin also has created an amazing full stack tutorial consisting actually of 5 parts for the demo app that you're also going to build during the workshop. And we'll publish one part of this tutorial every day. And it's a little bit of an understatement actually to call it a tutorial. To me, it's really just a course. It's very educational. It's like very similar quality of what you would find on Udemy or Egghead when it comes to kind of building applications. So it's not live yet. We are going to publish the first part of it later today. But exactly, you'll find it here on the Prisma blog. That's where you'll find Sabin's tutorials. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested in learning about building full stack apps with Prisma, Remix, and Mongo.
I'm looking forward to reading those articles.
All right, Jesse, anything that you still have to share with our participants, or should we wrap this up?
I think we're good to wrap up. You did a great job. I appreciate you having me, and looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, thank you so much for being my hands today. I really enjoyed the time here with you. And if anybody wants to catch up later, we'll upload this to our YouTube channel next week. And thanks you all for participating. It was great fun. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye.